speaking of us all kind of being bottled up and stuck at home and all that kind of stuff and desperately just looking forward to getting back to the movie theaters and restaurants and things of our regular habits, as you will, there's been a lot of speculation about when the movie theaters might be able to reopen again and open their doors. Some people think sooner rather than later. Some people think later rather than sooner. Well, in a report that just came out in the last couple of days, a representative for the North American theater owners has come out and said that the movie theater chains themselves are currently talking about and doing the initial planning for reopening their movie theaters come mid to late July. Now, if you're like me, your first reaction to that is like, that seems unlikely, but do keep in mind, a friend of mine reminded me about this, do keep in mind that, number one, that is still 2 months away. That's still 2 months away from now. Also, we have a lot of governors talking about they may be ready, or they're in the planning stages of when to reopen the economy as well. We've seen in a number of the hardest hit states that the curve has been flattening, so that's good. So it might still be a little overly optimistic to think mid to late July, but it does seem to be what is being discussed right now. I, for one, would be thrilled if the circumstances warrant it, and as long as it's not too much of a threat or too much of a risk to do so. And if that's what they say at the time, then great. I think it would be great. If they need to wait longer, by all means, wait longer. What we don't want to have happen here, Rob, is to open the doors too soon. We don't want to open the doors too soon just to have to close them again, 2 weeks later. But if they can do it, and we're in a position where they feel like it's a relatively safe thing to do at that point, and the government's on board with it, and the health professionals say, yeah, we're at a point that maybe we can start looking at doing this. Hey man, mid to late July sounds good to me. But anyway, obviously health comes first, but you hear about this, given the current circumstances, all that stuff. Do you think it's an okay move for at least the theaters to at least at this point be strategizing that as an opening date and pushing it if they need to? What do you think about it?
Well, I think, look, absolutely, you should be strategizing. You should always be planning for any contingency. I mean, I think about the worst calamities that happened to humanity. I think World War II being one of the biggest. It eventually ended. The war ended. Hundreds of millions of people died, but it ended. And we got out of it, and we're where we are now. This, too, will end. For me, there's only one question, and that is, watching all the TV that I've watched, it's all about finding out where the disease is and who has it. It all comes down to testing. And we've seen this happen in South Korea. You test people, you know who has the disease, who doesn't. The people that don't have the disease go back into quarantine. The people who don't have the disease can go about their daily lives. And we don't have that yet. And hopefully, over the next 2 months, we'll get that. But until we do that, we're not going to know. And I think it's really contingent on, it should all go hand in hand. Opening businesses have to go hand in hand with testing, because we don't want another flare up. We stay sequestered for months at a time. And if we haven't isolated and know where the disease is, it'll jump back. But I absolutely believe that you have to start planning many different contingencies of how to open the economy. And it does, John, maybe that's why they haven't moved Tenet off its date yet. Because there's a movie that if they can see the curve flatten, look, we had more deaths yesterday in a lot of places where the curve has been flattening. And I know that Boston and Massachusetts, they're expecting their peak not to come for another couple weeks yet. So it's going to also be regional. Maybe California will be able to open, California, Oregon, and Washington will be able to open movie theaters. Now, I don't know. The question that I have is, are studios going to wait until you can open theaters in all of North America, or would they be open to regional if the coastal states, if Washington, Oregon, and California can open their theaters? Movies used to open across the country. They would open in, say, New York and Los Angeles, and they would have regional rollouts for 6 months or even a year across the rest of the country. That has changed. But maybe we'll see a return to what we used to see in, say, the 70s and 80s. That might be interesting. I don't know if they would do that, because then they can't put up the kind of box office numbers they get when you get to open a North American release in one. I mean, I don't know if they'll do that. I really don't. Maybe businesses, like if you borrowed money from a bank, I don't know if they're going to like regional rollouts over 6 months. They want to get that huge influx of cash to get those interest payments in the bank. But it's interesting. We're in uncharted territory, so I think planning is good.
All right, guys, question here is, what do you think about that? Do you think right now it's prudent to at least be in the planning stages for reopening come mid-July, still 2 months away? Do you think it might be premature to do that? Obviously, the thing that trumps all of this will be, is it going to be safe at that time to do so? But in the meantime, should they at least be planning? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay.